Hello, my name is Andre V, and today I'm here again with my old friend Christian Oestergaard from PostNord. Hi, Christian. How are you doing?
Hi, Andre. I'm good, as always.
Yeah, it's nice to have you again. And we didn't have time to talk at Post and Parcel Expo, so let's talk about that today. Let's do a wrap up. What did you see? What did we see there? And if you allow, I will start again. I was excited, as you probably can understand, that one whole or one third of the event was parcel lockers. I guess you noticed it also.
Yeah, I think we all did. It was pretty impressive. It reminded me of the old days where you had the sorters being the shiny, flashy exhibition area. Now it was actually the lockers. Quite interesting.
This was exact analogy I was using. That a few years back, it was a sorting guys who were laying in one hall and having big machine there. And now it's lockers. But what it tells us, in a sense, I think it shows that out of home is still growing, and out of home technology providers are getting bigger, because the other thing you notice were that booths were bigger, and it means also more expensive. So there is money already.
Yeah, or they have investors in the back. That is also, one of the two takes, because as I think everybody was agreeing upon that it's becoming a fierce market. It's becoming also a market where many of the large ones have chosen sides, even though they choose to go maybe sometimes to use 2, 3 vendors. We can see that. That is very normal. That's happening in every industry. You don't want to put your eggs in one basket. But some of the big carriers are choosing side now, so they are taking huge volumes. And we also see with the consolidations on the markets, like we see in England and stuff. So there's a lot of things happening, which is consolidation, which also means that there will be a lot of them which will be under pressure, because I think you mentioned it, there was plus 30 vendors or something like that. I don't know if you had the exact number, but it was something like that. And having all 30 to survive, and I think that would be um, yeah, then they have to go to other markets, as you've always been telling them to do also. But it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be tight.
Absolutely. I think I counted only European ones, 24 at the event, but then there were also foreign companies that were there. But I think you pointed the right thing. 24 European companies were there. At least another 20 is available in who wasn't there. So 40 parcel locker manufacturers in Europe. It's too much, and definitely it is not sustainable. So there has to be some kind of, with a consolidation or normal development, that somebody will go out of market.
I think what we also saw was that there are things which are becoming a little bit more mainstream. The data that they generate are quite smart. We see new solutions with offline payment systems and solar power and all that. There comes a lot of gadgets actually also to the lockers, which is making it a more intelligent station. So I think that we will still see that coming over the next years as well, because there is a lot of innovation going on, and there's also a need for innovation in order to make them more accessible. I think the data is becoming more and more valuable, trying to identify how long and how and when people are anything that can give you an information on how the end consumers actually are using the solution will trigger new features that we have to work on.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we see different sort of small innovations, but in general terms, lockers are sort of ready already, because there wasn't any breaking or sort of fundamental innovation. We were talking about drop-off boxes, but those are sort of smaller lockers with special use cases. So for me, it seems that we are getting this locker industry is getting matured. We are starting to scale up the productions, not so much anymore innovating this essence.
True. Some of the innovation is something that we saw maybe 10 years ago. The first drop boxes is probably even further than that. There is But there is a professionalism in the solutions now. They're becoming standardized, as you say, which means that they have reached a maturity, which also means that there is this market fit now, which you can choose from. And I think that's quite given.
But let's talk about other areas also. Unfortunately, I had to spend a lot of time in lockers hall, but there were also sorting hall and AI and other things. What did you see interesting from those areas, not lockers?
Yeah, but I think that one of the things I spent quite some time both in the startup area and also in the conference. One thing that I think is very liberating, I would say. I'm a networker. I used to talk to a lot of people like you and everybody almost. And one thing I found very liberating when you are listening to dialogues, when you're talking to people, is the openness. I think we reached something we never dreamt about years ago, that people are even open about their problems, and what they think that we need to do together. And you see major, we've been seeing that also in leaders in logistics, and we see major influencers. We're talking about CEOs of the company addressing things very openly and being very transparent about problems that we have in our processes and the cost and how things are getting too expensive, and sharing both their good experiences and their bad experiences in a way that you never had before. I think one of the things that we talked about was in the old days, it can just go 3 years back. Everybody came with a corporate presentation. They came with a corporate presentation where they started how good they are and then explained a little bit about what they were doing. And it was more like a marketing piece of paper. Now, they don't spend that much time on who they are because, the world everybody knows everybody anyway. But what they are doing is they are putting their problems on the table. They are very open in discussions and saying, yeah, I agree, I don't agree, I believe this, I believe that, which is making it much more interesting as a viewer also to sit and listen now to what the different providers are thinking, what the different carriers are thinking, where the problems are. And it's generally just liberating, because it's not that you tell corporate secrets. No, you discuss about challenges, and I think some of them are structural. It can be costs, it can be expectations on our end consumers. These things where it's really, really challenging to be upfront and try to do everything to your best. So I think that there was this fairness that I never seen before.
You're absolutely right, and this was also my absolutely same thesis when I started. I had 4 panels in Post and Parcel Expo to moderate, and then this was my first rule was no corporate presentations, because again, this is not a sort of sales floor, and you will ruin your audience with this boring stuff. You have to talk about real stuff. You have to entertain listeners in a good way. You don't need to tell jokes, but you have to be relevant and you have to share knowledge. This is the biggest thing, not your USPs.
And I think that this is something that's happened in recent years. It's actually sometimes a pity that that we don't send more people to these events, because there's a lot to learn. And as you said, we can't cover the bases. I had areas where I didn't have time to go. I didn't have time to spend there. And I was like, damn, there was so much other things I wanted to do. I'm feeling already stressed next year when we only have 2 days. I said, what are we going to do? How are we going to manage to get the full value out of this? I'm sure that I will argument for that. Okay, fine. We need to send a little bit more people in order to make sure that we actually have somebody targeting every area and try to get the best out of this, because now it's really interesting. It's also, I think also, I call you parcel influencers. There are some of you guys out there who are extremely good at getting interviews like this and talking to everybody. It's a professionalism now. I think that you're absolutely right. It's not about presentations of the corporate. It's actually what do you think? What have you done? What do you believe in? And all these things which are the real essence on how we take things. This is this is why I go there. I talk to a lot of people. I only saw you for a while, but you were adjusting some cameras and stuff like that. It's because you really want to talk to people, and you want to share some of your thoughts and listen to what they're saying. And I I was actually laughing. I was together with Andre Farad, and the couple of days before the event, he posted on LinkedIn this discussion about the sustainability in outer home. It was fantastic in the sense that it's really difficult to get an end game calculation on it because are you going to pick up your parcel in a locker with a vehicle? Are you going with a bike? Are you going on a train? Are you walking? Slipper distance and all that. And then you have the different geographics where, for instance, in the Nordics, here, that we have electrical vehicles everywhere. It doesn't really matter if you come by car or not by car. It's quite sustainable anyway. And our distribution vehicles, they are all electric, more or less, especially where we have people. So there it's also sustainable in that sense. So the discussions have been, floating, and I love to see them, the arguments from one side to another, and somebody pulls up a report from Stockholm, and somebody pulls up a report from Paris, and I think it's actually, it's a wonderful environment where people are believers. People really spend time and do things because they have the heart behind it. And I think this is the most valuable thing, that you talk to people in that way.
Absolutely. I've been working 10 years in media publishing, newspapers and magazines and internet. This is actually quite a depressing, because this is a slow dying economy or dying profession. So this is totally different energy in last mile right now, because everything is bubbling. There is no sort of fundamental truth agreed, and there are very, very charismatic debates here and there going on. But about that collaboration, I think, again, I noticed the same, that the companies and the leaders are feeling more secure and self-confident, because on the last day, on the morning, we had a morning coffee with parcel locker manufacturer CEOs, and this has never been done before, because nobody was accepting competitors. But now we do. So I think that this is a major improvement, because one thing is not to compete. Competition still says it will never go away, but coming together, it helps us to discuss, standards, best practices, somehow influence the buyer's behavior, things like that. That is common for the whole industry. So I really see that the industry is maturing in many ways.
And also, that the markets differ. It's a lot I always talked about the DNA of the market, where do we come from? And that is also something that differs quite a lot, that you can penetrate one market in one way, you need to penetrate another in another way. And of course, you have some kind of home base or home crew of where you come from, because you have that knowledge the most. But the thing is that this is where you can learn also and listen to all kinds of differences and try to see, but is there anything here that I could bring to my market? Because I never thought about that, because I didn't see that need before. So I think that there are a lot of things that we can learn from each other in a way that they will, you can say that 30, 40 companies fighting about the market, but the market is still growing. It's still growing. And when you look at the projections, they are not going to disappear. Now, I think that one of the challenges is that we also get smart enough to figure out how to use all these lockers and make sure that our capacity is, the capacity per locker is as high as possible. I think that is some of the skill sets that we still need to work on. And my focus on the end consumers, convenience, what drives them in decisions about products and subscriptions and stuff like that, and how we get close. It's going to be quite interesting. I also saw that Amazon now is going to throw in billions of dollars into both the Dutch and the Belgian market to do quite a lot of improvements into the last mile, probably going into also same-day deliveries and stuff. That's going to be quite interesting to follow, because they have the capital to do it. And let's see what's going to come out of that. That is something that I think we all sit and try to monitor and saying, okay, fine, what's going to happen the next couple of years? There was some huge communication about that newly also. So there's always fluctuations, and there's always something that happens from event to event. So yeah, it's.
But I don't remember whether we have a bet, or at least we were arguing in the case when will be the day where the parcel will be delivered from the shipper to the recipient without human hand touching it. What do you think? Are we closer
Yeah, all
to
the
that
time.
now today?
Yeah, all the time. I think that, I hope that I can work with humanoids in 26. I'm not saying it's big scale, just try. Because we have some functions where we need to help ourselves. We can't get staffing. I think that if you wanted to do a solution today, you could do it. You could get it from a TPL. You could get it directly into from a warehouse into a sorting operation. You could get it into a sorting system. You could get it out to distribution and almost directly to a locker. We haven't really seen that last filling of the locker. I think that the closest was some solutions where when we had the little bit of focus on the robot solutions. That's where we are. But we can see Smart Cell is trying now to have this automatic loading of the locker and bring the locker to close to the people's. I think it's getting closer, I must say. It's not impossible. We could do it today if we wanted to. It's just a question about that would be an investment which wouldn't make any sense, but would prove a point. And these things, maybe we do that one day just for fun. But it's, I think it's getting closer. I'm a true believer in it. I said 2030. I still believe that it's probably going to be before. But I've been wrong before. I'm a very ambitious mind, so maybe
Yeah.
30. But I think really it's gonna come for a part of the load, a part of the process. Gonna go through. You see also these fulfillment things that we see in other cities. I just saw when I was in India. I saw it was not actually for commercial use, but they used it inside the factories where they stashed all the screws and all the things that they needed to have in a mechanical locker, so to speak. And I was quite impressed. I said, okay, bloody damn, this is getting close to, if we can feed it from one end and it could actually have a lot of parcels, it would be something that could take that end part. And I know that we could take a roller cage and feed it in, put a robot inside, put it onto a mechanical belt, and then feed it up on the shelf, and people could pick it up from there. It's feasible. How much
Yeah,
would it be?
I also think that we are closer to that. I think I'm in the same camp as you. Before 2030 will be the year when at least main part of the process is automated. But let's talk about the closest future and the Post and Parcel Expo next year. We are going to London with that, and it's 2 days as you mentioned already, and it's together with a e-commerce event. So, and it's UK that is not anymore a European Union. That makes actually a big trouble for the local companies, because
That's
dealing
what
with
I
the
heard.
customs and
That's one of the first
transportation
thing I heard.
is not the easy one.
Yeah, that's what the first thing I heard, and I think that also, I think they forgot it in the sense that it has that Brexit impact that we see. And I think it's a little bit of pity, because I think the show this time was really good. It was really beautiful. Some of the lockers were state of the art. You could see the money that they have spent on it, and I really wish that we could see that again in London. But I think it's fantastic to have the whole chain there. But many times, as also you invited me to speak in Tallinn last year, and I was sitting listening to these e-commerce wishes and commands, I would say. But I think also some of them were thinking way too traditional in the way that what they expected from the end consumer. Of course, there was these, some of them were startups, which were quite interesting in the way that they wanted to help the end consumer to find the right product, which I thought was really mind-blowing. But I also saw and heard a lot about that it was quite traditional what you expected from the end consumer. And you were thinking about servicing them in the traditional way. We need to get it, the orders in as late as possible to the carriers, and we need to get them out as first as possible. I am one of the ones that look at, when are we picking up these things? When are we picking the parcels up from the putter point? When are we picking it up for the locker? Because for me, it's a convenience thing. Everybody has busy, and they say, okay, no. I know that in the Baltics and in Poland, people are actually picking up their parcels many times in the first 6 hours. But if you look at to traditional Western Europe, no, they have a plan. We are not doing that. We have it for 24 hours. Even in France, they have 24 hours also on several of the vendors I heard.
Yes, but again, first of all, in Baltics we have done it 17 years already. So one generation has been grown up with native lockers. This is one thing. The second thing is about locations. Again, you have to put the locker where people are, not try to teach them to visit the locker in some kind of in the middle of nowhere. In a sense that there are so many cases I see that the locker is put in the space what was available, and thinking is that people will come. No, they will not. You have to put it where people already are, and then you can get this 6 hour retrieval time.
You're spot on. But the problem is that there are places where we can't. I talked to Rasmus, in Denmark. He's our head of out of home. And he said, I have spaces where I can only squeeze in a very small machine, but I could build a wall. But I can't get any permits. There's no land for doing it. There's no space of doing it. And so we are destined to not service our end consumer in a way that they want. There are places where we can't do what we want to do. And I don't know, if you remembered when Stockholm City just decided that, no, we don't want to have any lockers in public spaces. And we had to run like, crazy to figure out and make deals with the housing owners and stuff like that. And it was not something that the end consumers actually really liked. They were not supportive about this. This was something that was done because of... we always talk about these walls of lockers that comes into the public zone, so we will still see more of those problems at the same time where people are moving into cities more and more and more. So we need to figure out how to fit that balance, I think.
Yes, and I think for that we need some kind of our industry inside organization to start educating those city governments, because there are no specialists, in a sense that what they feel and see only is the ugly locker wall. They don't feel and understand the logic behind that, what it makes for sustainability, and we see it from the Prague, in a sense that Prague, which is the latest one who took their regulation in, but this was forced because Prague is really overcrowded with the lockers, and there are really unpleasant installations just because it happens to be.
But I was in Prague now a month ago, and I didn't see any lockers. I didn't go to big shopping malls, but when you walk the streets, you don't see them. They managed to put them inside. They have moved them into places.
This is the Prague regulation. First point is that the locker is preferred indoors, but again, I think we need to have some kind of framework worked out and pushing it to the regulators also. But
I have a comment there, because I think you're absolutely spot on. We saw during COVID how much it meant that we had a supply chain that was working, either with home delivery, either with lockers, whatever. Lockers were perfect back then also because people didn't have to interact, they didn't have to stand in a queue or whatever. But we missed that golden opportunity. If you look into the old days in 1860, when housemen were designing, I don't know if it was 1860s, I don't know. But when we had these big boulevards, we had train stations in the middle of the city. We had the postal office in the middle of the city. You know why? Because they were thinking about infrastructure. The infrastructure today is that we want to have all the cars out of the city, but we want to have cafes, and we want to cut the hair. Somebody like mine also cut it really, really slow all the time, away all the time. When we think about today, we are actually making it quite difficult to get that logistical infrastructure into the cities. And I think that we should address that in a way that we can all live of it, because the people who lives in the city, they want their goods. It's not that they just sit and drink cafe in a cafe, no, or coffee in a cafe. They don't do that. It's a question about that there's a lot of goods that needs to get into the city, that needs to be distributed in a way where the people who are living there can get it in the way that they feel comfortable with. And I think that we forget that because we're putting in a lot of restrictions about vehicles, a lot about parking lots are disappearing. Our vendors, I would say our drivers who are driving in with the goods have really cumbersome possibilities. Lockers are, can be a battle. So the infrastructure today, you don't think about those parts of the infrastructure you don't see in a way we did before. And it's quite mind-blowing. Now we have even more of infrastructure needs than we ever had.
I can only agree with you because most probably this is the reason of the era after Second World War. It has been an era of consolidation and centralization. Everything was consolidating, bigger and bigger. Also, in our industry, a few years ago, the sorting machines were big and centralized, and everything was centralized, and still are main cities. Logistics setups are very sort of capital city or one point centric, where is a huge sorting machine and everybody is going there. But I think we are going now through the decentralization. This is what you're talking about, the city center, the logistics center, the post offices. I think we are now, everybody has understood that there are limits already for this kind of centralizations, and we have to decentralize. And that's why also the lockers are sort of philosophically fitting into that infrastructure much better than centralized delivery methods.
Yeah, but we need to figure out how to get the goods to people. We need to figure out how we can, consolidate the deliveries and stuff like that. We need to figure out how to reach our end consumers, because they're the one that goes away from brick and mortar, goes away to e-commerce channels, and it's gonna impact the way that the infrastructure should be thought about. And that's my point, is that nobody is really putting effort in that. If there was a lot of there's work happening on digital twins of cities, but you know what the focus is? The focus is water, which with good reason also, because the water is increasing. But you could actually also think about, how are your cities going to survive also? Yes, we had big sorters, but we built them actually outside the cities, but the cities have grown now, so the sorters are inside the city, which is also giving us quite a complexity. Because in the old days, we could drive trucks there. Now it seems like a mess that we come with a truck, but we can't find any other places. If we have to find places, we are getting further and further away from the towns, which means that we're going to have to increase the number of vehicles to drive into the town. It is a little bit a problem, I would say, that cities are getting bigger and bigger and infrastructure is changing, but we haven't really thought about how we can solve the problems about bringing the goods to the people. That is something that we should think a little bit more about.
I love talking to you, and I could talk hours more. I'm lucky because I can talk to you in a week for 2 days almost.
Absolutely.
So, but thank you, Christian, for the time today. It was interesting, and so as always. And let's see you next week in Lisbon.
See you next week in Lisbon. It's going to be another interesting discussion that we're going to have on the out of home.